Okay, thank you very much. If Mr. Baranik will come up and Mr. Arndt, we will begin the presentation for the town hall meeting. And the question on the ballot will read as follows. Shall the debt service extension base under the property tax extension limitation law for Lindop School District 92, Cook County, Illinois, for payment of principal and interest on limited bonds be established at $425,000 for the 2022 levy year and all subsequent levy years, such debt service extension base to be increased each year by the lesser of 5% or the percentage increase in the consumer price index during the 12-month calendar year preceding the levy year.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jackson.
No problem.
It's all right.
You want my laptop?
Probably should be on the mic though too.
This way.
Take it off and can you walk and talk?
Good evening, Board of Education, community members, staff members, and administrators. First thing I want to mention here, once again, this referendum is being introduced as a debt service extension, as Dr. Jackson stated, not to exceed the $425,000 payment, which is currently established. This will allow the district, if approved, to be able to go out and issue approximately $6.5 million worth of bonds to address life safety and mechanical and capital projects that are in need here at Lindop School. I want to stress that this is a zero tax impact to the taxpayers. This is the actual question. I was able to review Cook County's election ballot that is out there. We are out there. It is on the ballot. It is posted in the main office, also posted outside the district office, and it will be posted on our website with the exact question that will be on the ballot as Dr. Jackson read, and that was published in multiple newspapers for the community to see the actual question for the referendum. Once again, I want to stress zero tax impact. After this presentation, I will have Andy Arndt from Baird come up and show that. He is the expert in the field with showing that zero tax impact for our taxpayers. The pictures that you're going to be seeing are the main items that would be prioritized to be addressed if this referendum was to pass and the board was to issue bonds for approximately $6.5 million. The first major project that has to be done here at Lindop is the roofs. Approximately 70% of the building needs new roofs. On this picture, we have section A and section B. Section A is the middle school wing. The roof is approximately 22 years old, and it has some issues currently with ponding of water, some membrane pulling away from the seams. And then section B is the elementary wing down to the pre-K. This roof is actually older and is also experiencing membrane issues. And there is some additional issues with mechanical items that are on it that are out of compliance for the standards that are currently in place, which would be addressed once the roof would be replaced. If we look at the different sections on this PowerPoint here, you'll see what we're talking about with the ponding. The reason the ponding is bad, eventually water will work to where there is a penetration, which will then eventually seep into the actual building. We have had a few leaks here and there sporadically in the junior high wing. This current year, we had 3 of them that had to be patched. And if you notice, it continues to keep ponding in various areas. The slope of the roof is actually not pitched correctly where it's not getting to the gutters. And then you will see the seams, the membrane, where the seams need to be addressed, that it's actually pulling away and raising, which is causing penetration points potentially if the water ponds and gets into those seams. If we move on to the elementary section, you will see all of the different mechanical piping and various mechanical things that have to be brought back up to standard once the new roof is there. The biggest thing is the supports that are out there. The new current supports with current trends are just way better than what we currently have. Once again, these are over 20 years old with old supports, which would have to be addressed. The membrane, if you look at it, are also pulling apart at the various seams with it. You can see the roof where it has a bunch of cracks in it. It is not supposed to look like that. The new roofs are a completely different design, way more energy efficient, and have a life expectancy of over 25 years. The next major issue that is on our life safety report is tuck pointing. This tuck pointing has been on for 2 life safety reports, pushing it to nearly 20 years old. The reason tuck pointing is very important is so that water doesn't penetrate, or if it continues to keep deteriorating, potentially you could have bricks on various chimneys potentially become compromised and may possibly become a hazard of falling and deteriorating and then falling onto the roof, causing a safety issue. These do need to be addressed. This is one of the highest priorities that we have on our life safety. And the cost for this is approximately $250,000. The next section on our life safety report that needs to be addressed is mechanical issues. Our building is, I guess it varies in ages from different additions to additions. And as new standards come in, we have to continuously update to make sure that we are in legal requirements, what is expected through West 40, which is our regional office that does life safety inspections, and with the state, so that the health and safety of all our students and staff is met. So we do have some severe mechanical issues within the next 3 to 5 years that need to be addressed. One other thing that I want to point out on here is that we have our air conditioning unit, which is located out by our playground. And that is a pretty significant cost to replace, even though it's working correct now and we have it serviced with annual routine maintenance. It is approaching, close to 20 years old, 25 years old on that, and it could potentially go at any point. So it's something to keep in mind as we move forward and prioritize using our money to address these life safety issues. But that's a $300,000 estimated cost. And that's a pretty significant thing, especially with our current weather. If you didn't have air conditioning for our students with it, we probably wouldn't be having school with it. So that's something that we got to keep in mind and make sure that we have the safety and well-being of not only our students, but our staff to be able to do what they do. The next item that would have to be done here would be electrical. There are some big plans to continue pushing using renewable energy and trying to go green as the initiative within our village. And some of the things that we do have to address though internally before we could even move forward with those is making sure that our fire alarms are up to code, making sure that our internal clock systems are going into code, an entire school generator. We didn't have power last week for 4 days. That was a significant issue that we encountered here. And then obviously updating the electrical panel in the boiler room which would allow us then to expand onto some of these initiatives that the Village of Broadview has brought forth. And we want to follow the lead with the village and enhance renewable energy. But in order to do that, we have to do these upgrades in order to keep pushing forward with current state of the art and the green initiative that we have. The biggest item that we not only want to address, we have to address the envelope of our school, making sure that it's safe and secure, but then we want to do something that is innovative for our students, and we would like to reimagine our Lindop library. If we look at our current state of our library, very traditional. The oak bookshelves that come into the oak tables and sit, circulation desk in the middle, very, very traditional. What we would like to do is reimagine it, create a 21st century space. We want to create learning areas for students where they can feel comfortable going in there, sharing new ideas, working with teachers in different teacher zones, working in collaborating areas, really, really re-innovating this whole thing with the state-of-the-art 21st century stuff. This would be the centerpiece of Lindop School, this new innovative library. Some of these pictures are just examples of what other districts have done to try to re-innovate the space that they have. Some of the trending examples, you will see the portable, removable, retractable rooms. So if you had to create an actual classroom in there, you would be able to do that. You have flexible seating with it. You have warm, inviting colors, change in lighting with it. So all these little things is what we're trying to imagine with creating this new innovative Lindop library as the centerpiece. This would allow students the ability to work together in collaboration areas, become more hands-on, working in small groups, just making it more conducive for the students to collaborate and work together. The biggest thing is we want to shift from teacher to student center and make it warm, open, inviting. All these pictures, when we look at them, are creating a new design, new look, new innovation, just reimagining it, rebranding our library. The library is a significant cost. It's estimated to be about $1.2 million to renovate. Obviously, it wouldn't just be the administration, the Board of Education. This is something that would have to be going out for input from various community members, various subgroups to get inputs, ideas, and then all those different stakeholders would put forth the new ideas, which would come with multiple renderings that would go for a vote. And that would be what would go through with the new library that would be re-innovated. So if we look at all those different projects that are out there and prioritizing those items, as of right now, just doing those are 5.5 million with it. One thing that I do want to mention is that inflation is through the roof right now. Building products are very costly. The shipping is difficult to get. So with this, that price could fluctuate. We don't know if it's going to come in at that. It may come in higher. We're hoping that our architect and engineer gave the best guesstimate for addressing those different areas, but this would allow us to be able to address those main areas with the roofing, the library, the mechanical, the electrical, and then hopefully with that $6.5 million, it tightens up the envelope, creates that new innovative library, and puts that as the centerpiece of the community and puts Lindop right back in as the main attraction to Broadview. Steps we have taken to help the taxpayers We have applied and received 2 rounds of the property tax relief grants. What that is that the district is abating money back to the taxpayers and shifting the burden from the local taxpayers to the state. So we're giving back money to the taxpayers, increasing our evidence-based funding formula, which is the state old general state aid formula that we have. It's now called evidence-based funding, which we have increased by abating the taxes back to the community. We have also negotiated vendor contracts to try to minimize those increases as inflation has really gone excelling upward with the current trends. And then obviously we have put out for all kinds of grants to try to get additional money to offset costs locally. We've done that with cafeteria grants, the solar grant, and community partnership grant. And we also just put in for a Freedom School grant that hopefully we will be approved for. And then the biggest thing that we've been able to do is we've utilized the ESSER funds. That is the COVID money that we have received. We have received 3 rounds of the COVID money. We are trying to maximize every dollar from that to really address learning loss and the needs of the students, but yet also creating a safe environment for our staff and students by addressing air quality. And then there's also a big piece in there that we're trying to do with some safety. And then we continuously look at our fund balances. Each fund that we go through, we try to maximize every dollar that we possibly have. We continuously do this. And the biggest thing is we try to maximize every dollar that we get from the taxpayers and have a balanced budget. What happens if the referendum doesn't pass? Some of the things that we would have to do over the next 2 to 5 years is prioritize our life safety projects that we have. With it, we wouldn't be able to address everything all at once and get better pricing. We would have to piece it over the next 10 to 15 years and really dissect what we were going to do summer after summer after summer and try to figure out how do we get all this work done where we can get what we would get to the end point. It would be tough with it. Is it possible? Yes, but you're not going to see the big change that you would see if this referendum passed and we were able to address these big items right away. Some of the things that we would definitely have to look at, and this is not something that the community would want to see, is, okay, how would we be able to reduce some money? And that would be reducing teaching staff potentially. Our class sizes are relatively small. We would have to look at staffing and say, could you get away with running 2 sections versus 3 sections and increase that class size from say 15, 16 up to 28, 29? That's something to look at that would save the district quite a bit of money. Would we look at our electives that we're trying to build so much and make these junior high kids ready for high school and transition them from high school then to college? Okay, we'd have to look at our electives and pull them back and scale them back and really concentrate maybe on 1 or 2 and not offer all the ones that we have. We may have to look at potentially cutting the all-day pre-K that is out there, something that we don't want to do. However, if you were to eliminate and not run that program, it would save some significant money with it. And then, of course, even with that, you're still piecing together your projects. It gets you a big chunk of change, but it doesn't get you to that figure to really make that significant change that is needed by issuing the potential of $6.5 million bonds. Now, remember that life safety survey showed about $11 million in work that has to be addressed in the next 10 years. Even by cutting 1.2 annually, it's still going to take some strategic planning and really coming up with a direct plan as to what's going to be addressed on that life safety survey and prioritizing the items. That is the town hall presentation. As far as Lindop's needs, at this particular time, I'm going to have Andy Arndt come up. He is our financial background expert with it to stress the non-tax impact to the taxpayers. And I would like you to have Mr. Arndt speak on it as he is the expert in the field.
And at that time as well, we will entertain questions. And so if anyone is on Zoom that has questions, please type them into your chat and we will address those as well. Thank you.
All right, well, good evening. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Andy Arndt. I'm with Baird Public Finance. And we've been talking about this topic now for quite a few months with the Board of Education through finance committees and open board meetings. So this is nothing new, but I just want to give a little recap here. I'm going to skip over some of this because both Dr. Jackson and Mr. Baranik have covered it at this point. So just to kind of consolidate here, I'll focus on the items that we haven't touched on. I think one of the important things that hasn't been said at this point tonight is that currently Lindop School District cannot borrow to finance for projects without going to referendum of some kind. So through that initial discussion, we've gotten to the point of identifying a debt service extension-based referendum as the means that we're going to attempt to be able to do that. Now, another thing I want to point out is that a successful referendum does not automatically mean $6 million is deposited into the school district's bank account. There are other steps and processes that have to take place after a successful debt service extension-based referendum in order for the district to capture the money that you're hoping to capture for these projects. And so that is an entirely different process. It takes about 3 months, each individual bond issue. And so that's something that we will explore and talk about, when the time comes. But I think that's important to understand. It's been mentioned already that we're looking to do this with no tax increase. The payment target that we're looking at is $425,000. We have that illustrated here in a couple slides so that it makes sense to everybody. But really, I think one question that has come up that I'm aware of is this standard question, which has now been read at least once tonight. Asks, a portion of the question asks, let me see here. Such debt service extension base to be increased each year by the lesser of 5% or the increase in the consumer price index. That is a standard legal form of a question that's put before the taxpayers. But what's important to understand is that we've all talked publicly about targeting $425,000. It's up to the current board and future boards to decide whether or not they're going to capture those increases or simply keep those payments static at $425,000. And every conversation that we've had up to this point is to keep that payment static. Now, it can change at some point in the future, but I think it's been said enough that that's our goal and that's our hope, is to keep that payment flat without increases. And again, the illustration will show that. We've pretty much covered this slide. This is something we talked about previously, that there was a lot of steps to get here, a lot of hoops to jump through in order to just get that ballot on the question. And Scott pointed out that it is in fact at the county level on the ballot. So it'll be ready next week when the voters go to the booths. So on this page, we've talked about this at least previously at a board meeting. The teal section of that pie chart represents the portion of District 92's levy that is reserved for bond payments. Right now, that's less than 7% of the overall levy of the school district. If we continue to extend that after a successful referendum, it will still remain approximately 6 to 7% of the overall levy for the school district, which is a relatively small portion. To put that in meaningful dollars and cents, the owner of a $100,000 home, in order to pay their tax bill and pay that teal portion of that pie chart, would pay approximately $6 per month in their tax bill each year to accommodate that. So as Scott talks about all of those needs that total $5.5 million or more, what he's asking for, in a question like this, is he's saying, can we continue to ask that $100,000 home fair market value for that $6 per month in order to take care of the tuck pointing, the roofs, the library renovation and all of those things that he covered in his portion of the presentation. For a $200,000 home, it comes out to about $17 a month. And again, both of those assume that that taxpayer gets the homeowner's exemption, which is pretty standard for anybody that's going to be sending children to school. It's anybody that is living in that home as their primary residence. I pointed out at the beginning that currently your district cannot borrow without going to referendum. You're right there smack dab in the middle. Your current debt service extension base is $0. Now, what we wanted to look at is how does that compare to neighboring elementary districts, pretty much in the immediate area, not venturing out too far. And you can see that it's pretty wide ranging. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 up to over $3 million annually is what those districts can have a bond payment to tackle projects. So for example, if Bellwood 88 had no other bond issues outstanding, they could tackle your project list and pay it off in 2 years. And so there is definitely some unfairness going on here with the way that these were established. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. And so what we're trying to do is bring you up to par or closer to par with your neighboring districts. To put this in perspective, if you were to succeed in passing the referendum, you would be almost identical to Comarec 94, which is the gold bar third from the right. So you would by no means be at the top of the list, but it would definitely pull you up from the bottom as far as your capabilities for future needs. So what would happen also is in the future, it would be up to the school board at the time to decide whether or not to capture additional dollars if needed for projects by tapping into this payment limit that you would have access to. Currently, that limit is $0. So you cannot extend a levy for non-referendum bonds. I think most of this has been covered. There's just some key takeaways that are in here, and this will be available online afterward. So if anybody on Zoom wants to revisit this, it should be out there available to them and to the board as well. But one of the main things is that when is this vote taking place? It's next Tuesday. It is 1 week from today. It's coming up quick. And so we're hoping that, you know, if you haven't shared the information with neighbors, you haven't talked to your neighbors about it, you know, please do and get those conversations going because time is of the essence. Let's see. I think Scott covered what would happen if the referendum didn't pass. And there's a lot of financial impacts, obviously, that would change the way that he would budget for projects and tackling those things over the next few years. Another opportunity is that in November, you would potentially, as a board, be able to decide to go down this road again and try to ask the taxpayers a very similar question in hopes of trying to get to the point of being able to tackle these projects. Because every year that these projects don't take place, the cost of those projects typically escalates over time. So whatever's estimated this year at 5.5 million or 6 million, next year might be 6.5 or 7. So that is time playing against you as well. I think it's been said several times at this point that the goal here is not to increase taxes, but to simply continue to be able to ask for the same bond payment over the next 20 years, which is the legal maximum that you can borrow against. And if there were a successful referendum, the gray bar would be the last remaining payment from the last referendum that Lindop 92 tackled, which was exactly 20 years ago. In November of 2002 was the last time that the school district asked the taxpayers a question similar to the one that you'll be asking next week. But if that question were to pass and bonds were sold, this is what the payments would look like: $425,000 annually for up to 20 years to capture the money needed to tackle those capital projects. And I believe that is all that I've prepared. So Scott and I are available for questions if anybody has any.
Community also is right. Any board members have any questions? I know that we've been through this painstakingly. So I think that we are probably okay. But at this time, our community, Are there any questions in the community at all at this town hall meeting? If there's any questions that you all have, I know we don't, you didn't fill out anything, but you have the opportunity now to ask a question if you need to, if you'd like. Okay,
I would like to state that if there are no questions, I would like to thank the two of you because you have been very thorough in explaining a lot of issues, even myself, that I had with questions about it, and thank you.
There are no Zoom participants other than board members.
Well, if anybody, any members of the public have any
Nothing online,
questions, feel free
Nothing
to
online.
pass them my way. I'm happy to tackle them.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right,